Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Worm Wednesday. I'm your host, Strix Snipety. This is Worms WMD on the Xbox One. It is a ranked game, pro scheme, appears to be a single island on Wormhole. A very interesting setup. I'm playing as the Blue Worms, my opponent is the Red Worms. I will say that the setting of this map is very appropriately named for what my opponent has named his worms. So you will see them in a few minutes once all the worms are down. And a very interesting map. Single island with what appears to be just a single mountain in the middle. If you're not proficient with worm rope, I imagine it'd be very difficult to get up the left. Very difficult to get up the right. And not a lot of cover in the middle. Middle top, I mean. There's plenty of cover on the bottom. I see that there's that Rocket League car on the left. There's a tank on the right. Turrets on either side. Seems to be no drill boat. Drill boat on this level would be pretty good. I think at least. Plenty of mines though too. So this is at 2x speed for your viewing entertainment. It is a ranked game. As soon as I found an opponent, I hit record. Some days there's just not a lot of people on the Xbox, so it was a great game though. Don't actually remember everything that happens though. Quickly grabbing that 25 health, and I'm looking to get my target on that worm that's stuck in that hole. If I could pause those shots a little better, I probably would have been able to get that mine to land right on that worm. I think my most important worm is that worm that's on that top level right now. If I can keep him alive, I should be able to change to either side and handle any threats. Really, like I said last time, the most important thing is terrain, and then it's vehicle usage. And I think always having the high ground is going to be the advantage, but you also want to have cover in that high ground. I know that sounds like 2 points of conflict, but there's always some way to hide your worm, I think. Taking fall damage there, gotta watch out for that. For example, that worm Frank can hide just a little bit behind that red kind of throne that's in the terrain, and Banger can now hide inside of that hole just a little bit, ever so slightly, and hide itself from everything besides a bunker buster, pretty much. And taking a little bit of damage from that mine. How am I going to get out of this? I believe that I end up worm roping out. I want to try to make sure that I get just to the outside of it. Doing damage with the mine and then going to continue doing damage. Ultimately a good shot, but landing way too close to that tank. Opponent has a lot of downwards control. Like I said before, you never want to underestimate your opponent because things can change really quickly in this game. Seeing people lose their kind of control because they gain too much confidence, and the next thing they know, their highest worm has been shot off the edge of the map, and their other worms are in a really bad position. And that was a great play. Matching that tank in that spot is going to force me to either leave that tank, most definitely leave that tank, but also probably use another one of my equipment unless I destroy it, which I do end up doing. Spoiler alert. Also trying to zoom in on this a little bit more. Trying to make this a little bit easier to view and see what's going on. Like I said, I'm changing things up every video. See what finds a balance. There aren't a lot of Worms commentators out there that just do competitive games. But I know that there are a few people that are interested in seeing competitive games. So, we'll see. Right now I'm about a little bit less than double the health of my opponent. Gonna try to finish them off before the time gets too high. Trying to place my worm on another worm that has also just moved is a good tactic. So you can see here this worm named Lucifer and Hot Dog are right next to each other. It's going to be very difficult for this other worm to do any damage to my worm without also finishing off his own. Which he does end up doing. So all things considered, I count that as a good turn for me. And now I'm in a very difficult spot, not in terms of where I can kind of interact with my opponent, but in terms of where I can go. Doing damage to my own worm there because of that mine and that explosive crate, and then running out of time, and then doing damage to myself. I should have probably focused on the right side, but I think I was overambitious with what I could do with that tank. Not the best position to be in. That's another thing. If you're going to end, try to finish off your worm in a vehicle, in a position where if your worm gets taken out of that vehicle, your worm can fall into a spot that's hard to hit. So having a really low depression, it's going to be hard for that tank to rematch the kind of depression, the elevation or depression that I'm at, because that tank would have to point basically all the way down. At that point, you have a very high chance of hurting yourself and ending your turn early. Opponent going for the grenade. Gotta watch out for that terrain. Worms is extremely specific, and that's why I think it makes for such a great competitive game. And at that point, me getting that worm select is just overkill at this point. But you can never be too safe. Running out of time yet again. Great position, bad placement. Or maybe the reverse. Great placement, bad position. Opponent might not know about this single hitting A once, allowing you to do a long jump. It's critically important the higher level and higher level you get, having full access to the worm's movement and the full arsenal of weapons you can use. Bringing my opponent down to 62 on that worm and 7 on the other. I still have 4 worms remaining, but it might be the final end for Hot Dog here. My opponent finishing off Hot Dog. I'm now down to 3. My opponent's at 2. Not quite sure how I'm going to get out of here. And I go for the sniper, but just out of range. It's a little bit of geometry in my way. I think if my opponent aimed a little bit higher, I actually might have been able to get over that turret and launch that worm off. And then it could have been very quickly a 2v2 game. And at that point, all this numbers really doesn't matter if my opponent has the right weapons to use that can just knock me off the map. And the positions I'm in, I'm extremely exposed to that outside. Or changing to the correct vehicle. You know, maybe getting that Rocket League car. And just like that, could have very easily knocked that tank worm off and then hit that other worm, and then it would have been a 1v1 right at that point. So definitely not overkill to ever go easy on an opponent, or ever go too sweaty on an opponent in a ranked game. Because here, that's the 3rd turn I've missed, being in this position at the top. But I think I'm pretty safe at this point once my opponent finishes the turn. I'm confident with the remaining weapons that I have. And I think after this turn, the game is pretty much secured. So long as that worm doesn't die. Yep, Frank's alive. I want to thank everyone for joining me again for another Worms Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your week. Stay warm, stay healthy. Peace.